So, welcome to the small tour of my sharpening stone collection. I just did a head count, and there's 75 individual stones on my bench. And I've been looking forward and planning on making this tour and talking about them. And I just keep like getting caught up because there's not a linear thought process behind all of this. It's a collection, and with natural and synthetic and man-made sharpening stones in use and practice and collecting, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. So I was just going to start with a little tour of what's what and where I've been going a little bit. You can see a lot of these have these blue tape with numbers written on them like an absolute madman, and we'll get to that in a second. We're kind of going to start in the synthetic corner because the diamond plates are a workhorse, and I've used these DMTs, continuous grit, they're dia-sharp lines, for years. So much so that my extra coarse is almost worn out. And I used to use this one particularly, to lap natural sharpening stones. And of course I have an X-Fine. This is extra coarse. And these are workhorses, and they're very good for tool edges. But diamond plates are also kind of a dead material in terms of the feedback you get. You know, you can really scratch a tool. There's a certain deadness to the quality. This is an Atoma 140, and its diamonds are really nice. The way they're laid out, it's a beauty. Here's a Sharpening ceramic matrix. It's a 120 mesh. This was one of the first synthetic stones that made me kind of go, ooh, because it does take some maintenance. You'll have to lap it flat. And when you first lap it flat, the edges are fresh, they cut. You use some water, it wears in, it slurries up, it gets finer in its action, and it really has some nice qualities going for it. They're really lovely stones. Some of my go-tos when I'm doing initial lap work, especially on rusted old tool edges, are some of these yellow carborundum stones. I've never seen yellow carborundum anywhere since or after. So I'm always kind of curious if anyone else out there has seen some. But they're hard, they're durable, they're coarse, and they're very fast. They're faster than my diamond extra coarse. So I use these for a lot of dress work to start lapping a tool edge. I recently found these Bioxo Baryonex American mudstones that are really cheap. They're very porous. They have a lot of airspace, but they're very hard. They're silicon carbide, aluminum oxide, and trace amounts of diamond. And this is a great bang for your buck if you're looking for something to start rough lap work with. You could jump from this to a Washita or a soft arc or an India stone, and you're 80% there to your sharpening needs. Obviously, I have some Japanese natural water stones, vintage. This is a Naniwa Snow White. It's an 8K stone. It's really nice. This is a case moonstone that I got recently. What is it? It's man-made. It's synthetic. Ceramic matrix. But it has the distinction of being the densest sharpening stone I own. It's much heavier than any Arkansas Novaculite you'll find out there. It has a specific gravity of 3.6. Haven't had a chance to play with it yet. These are my Novaculites. These are what you call old world Washitas, some modern vintage Washitas, Arkansas, etc., etc. And this is where we jumped off into measuring for specific gravity, which is a relative term of measurement that doesn't relate to anything much else. It's useful when you're weighing a known material, which all Washitas and Arkansas stones are Novaculite, with a certain mineral crystalline structure and alignment. It's only the question of porosity. So the harder stones are denser packed, like this one is dense, 2.49. My softest Washita is 2.1, but it's actually not. This one is way soft at 2.0, but I'm pretty sure it's an Novaculite. So that's kind of curious. And everything in between. We have some modern hard arcs. This is called a hard arc. It's 2.37. It's in that range. It definitely has a smooth, like, the pores are very light on it. These three are interesting because they're unknown to me. They have this one, and these two have a similar color, almost that Washita look, but they're not like any Arkansas or Washitas you'll see. This one may not fall into the category. So here's a tip when you're looking at old stones, especially Arkansas, Washitas, Novaculites. Novaculites are a form of chert, aka flint. If you think of any arrowhead or flint napping, if you've done it, the way an arrowhead is napped with the edge and the way the edges break, you'll see some of these, they call them concordial fracture lines. When they break almost like a glass fracture. And so these have that classic, like flint napped concordial fracture mark, which leads me to think that these are Novaculites, possibly not American, but who knows. So there's lots of little mysteries and lots of known mysteries here. So those are the Novaculites. There's some translucent arcs. This one may or may not be in Arkansas. It has a high specific gravity, but it has this milk white color, which is interesting. We'll get to these in a second. These are the Sandstones on the bottom here. Let's get my partners out of the way. So many years ago, I picked up this little axe puck or a Siltstone. Clearly natural because it has some inclusions which do not affect its lap work. But this is always been one of my second to last finishing stones. It's not polishing, but it's right before that. And so some people point out it might be a Clear Creek, which is, I believe, Sandstone from Ohio. But I was never able to confirm that. But I recently picked up this stone, which still has a bit of the Norton label. And the color is almost the same. But this one is denser and it feels a little finer. This is almost certainly probably a Sandstone if it came from Ohio. Who knows? And another similar one. But this one has some iron staining. This feels pretty fine too. So, and these all have a specific gravity in the 2 to 1, 2.1 to 2.2 range. But this one is denser. And these are, in that fine India stone range. I'd call them 1K plus lightly. They're a mid-range stone. But this one just seemed to be on the upper edge in my use, so it's interesting. These stones, very recently, I got a lot of stones, and I picked out some interesting ones and was selling all the rest. And these caught my eye at the very end. I almost just passed them on. Mostly because of the way they're worn. They feel so smooth. So I dressed some faces and measured them to compare them. These all appear the same. So I was starting to wonder, what are these? They're very light, too. 2 specific gravity, but very fine. So gravity and density does not equal coarse or fine. It can be totally different and irrespective. And then I picked this up from a friend in British Columbia, Blair Kemp. And it might be a Tam O'Shanter, we're not sure. There is some writing. It's been partially deciphered. So these may be in that category or not. Tam O'Shanters were a Scotch hone. I believe they're a type of slate. But this almost has a soapy soapstone feel, and I haven't had a chance to play around with it too much, but it seems to leave a really nice, fine, cloudy finish. It's not mirror polishing, but it's up there. These I have yet to test out. And this is most certainly a synthetic stone, because it's got these prints, but it's also really fine. And I kind of put it in as a control to use against these to see. Coming to one of the last food groups. These are what I would call the slate varieties over here. And there's some interesting ones, for sure. For example, there's only 2 stones in this whole collection. They know exactly what they are. I picked this up from Marketplace from Vaton Mas, thank you. It came in a wooden box. It's a Thuringian, known. It's really smooth. It has that slate feel. It had a specific gravity, or does, of 2.8, so it's dense. And what's curious is that I compared it to something else that I suspected might be a special stone. This has all the look and feel and action of that Thuringian. Its specific gravity is a little lighter, but this is a big sucker. And this could be a Thuringian, or would you call that a German slate? I'm not really sure. This is a Deerlick. The label is so far gone, but it is a genuine Deerlick label. It's old, 110, 20 years old. And this has that slate look, and almost, it has a little bit of sparkle. And these are treasured stones. And this is a good upper mid-range or low finisher around that, I would guess. So this is almost exactly in line with my known Thuringian. It's a suspected Thuringian, and it certainly looks like it. This, Phil Gilmore sent this to me. It came with an antique straight razor. And I thought it was a surgical black, having a very high density. It is black as night, almost. But I can scratch it. Like, I scratched that with, a razor edge. It's not as hard as a Novaculite, in my opinion. So this may, in fact, be something different. A dark slate. Phil's in Australia, so it could have come from any place in the old world. Then here, this one from Michael Chunklaski was interesting. It's 10 inches long. It looks natural because it does have some inclusions, but it has this brilliant sparkle. And I've heard of certain types of metamorphic slate. They metamorphosize and have certain compounds that change to other things that are hard. It's just like a whisper I've heard in the wind. So I haven't had a chance to test this out a lot, but it looks just different. I don't think it's carborundum. And then some of these smaller ones, these could be slates or really fine carborundum, for like a razor or slip hone. But this also has that black sparkle, so that's kind of curious. Some further investigation, might learn some more. Another category are American Siltstones. These are Hindustans, which I'd heard of and for the longest time assumed they came from someplace far away. But no, they're actually from Indiana, and they are Siltstones. They come from Hindustan, Indiana. They'll often have these layers, which are sedimentary layers from coastal tides from over 300 million years ago, when Indiana was a coastal area on the equator. And this is light, 2.237. It's on par with India, roughly, is what I would say. And this likely is also a Hindustan. It has some layering. It's much darker. I did a ton of lap work, but I'm not sure if this is natural color or embedded with oil, but it feels like it has a form factor that is higher. So that's curious. And lastly, we have the Belgian Coticules. Some of these are old world, some of these are newer, and some of these are really cool and old. And Coticules are in a class of their own. They're all garnets, which have a totally different cutting action. They're lovely. This may or may not be a Coticule without any backing. I'm not sure, but if you smell it, and if you've smelled Coticules at all, there's almost a chalky smell. Maybe. Maybe not. So that's the brief tour. My phone's about to die. We're going to cap it there, and I'm going to do some follow-up videos talking about other aspects of using and evaluating natural and all kinds of synthetic sharpening stones. And if you heard anything in my video that wasn't correct or that you have a question about, please comment. I'd love to hear it.